3 times a year, Hebrew pilgrims made the journey to worship in Jerusalem. Much of the walk was an upward one, an ascent to the highest elevation in all of Israel. Songs were sung in sequence as devout followers climbed toward the temple together. The ascent was not just literal, but symbolic, a physical journey to refresh the memories, stories, and promises of God's faithfulness, of His character. These songs became known as the Psalms of Ascent, and we have them as a trail guide to this very moment to guide our upward journey toward Christ.
This is the heart of pilgrimage.
So here we are in our 3rd week of study together, and together really is an important part of what we're doing. You read in the introduction about Tracy and my experiences together. We have shared full-sized beds in non-air-conditioned, mosquito-infested hotel rooms overseas. We have climbed a mountain together where we literally walked step in step in order to reach the summit. And we've done a lot of these things together with our other Freedom Sisters. Right now, I am on day 20 of walking the El Camino. Some of our days have been 18, 19, 20-mile days in the heat with blisters on our feet and incredible fatigue at the end of the day. And while we wrestle through our dinner and tiredness, what we talk about is the experiences of that day. At the end of this journey, and I go home to my family and my Freedom Sisters go home to their families, we will tell the stories of what happened to us here and what we experienced. And they'll listen and they'll try their best to empathize and maybe even lament with us. But there is no one that will understand those shared experiences like my Freedom Sisters will. And the Psalms of Ascent are very much the same way. They were sung and spoken in unity in oftentimes caravans of people making the journey upward toward the temple. They understood together the preparation that it took to go on this pilgrimage, and they understood together the sacrifices that were made to get there. And as the leader would make a call and they would respond, they did it in a shared way, in community with one another. They were in the flesh and in the spirit, calling on the character of God. And they testified to who He was and who He promised to be and who He is through these Psalms of Ascent.
I think pilgrimage is so allegorical to our current life and the way that we can live more holy, live more thoughtfully, more intentionally, and then to even create margin in our lives to meet people along the way. You know, God really puts people in our paths that need Him. And so how do we continually be a fragrance of the Lord everywhere we go, and maybe be a little less hurried in the process so we can hear from Him when it's time to talk to that person in line in front of us, or bless this person that we see along the way. If our heads are down and we're too busy to notice, we won't do that. So pilgrimage has taught me a lot about what I'd like to pass down to my kids, a way of living that's light, that's reflective, that's thoughtful, and that's surrounded by good friends along the way, good friends, good family to spur you on.
Three times a year, these holy pilgrimages were a huge part of communities. Whether you lived in a city or a farm or a village, families, community leaders, spiritual leaders would gather up and began the ascent to Jerusalem. Very multi-generational. Just want you to imagine how it would be to lead an entire family, littles, grandmas, grandpas, the whole group, on this journey. These songs were a big part of that journey. A leader, maybe a community leader or a father or a grandfather, would recite portions of the songs. And often there would be a response from his family or maybe even the whole village. There was a call and a response. It was very active and engaged. And if you think back to how you remember things, it's often through a song. So you can see the multi-generational aspect of learning who God was through song, through call and response, through a father saying one portion of a psalm and all of the rest responding with what the answer or the conclusion would be. So frame these songs in that imagery. It might give you a peek into what the heart of pilgrimage looked like.
I know from experience that there's something really valuable in an invitation. Significant people in my life have really changed the cadence of my life because they invited me into shared opportunities. When I summited Kilimanjaro with my Freedom Sisters, I came home and I shared of those experiences, but there was no one there with me who experienced them like I did. And so when it came time to sign up for this, the El Camino pilgrimage that I'm on now, I hoped that there would be people in my hometown that would come with me. And I'm so excited to say that 2 of them have. And now when I go home, because we've had this shared experience, and I was once invited in, and now they were invited in, that we've experienced it together. And the same is true with the Psalms of Ascent and the pilgrimage toward the temple.
I grew up not in a Christian home, and I had loving parents, but always conditional love. And then I met my mother-in-law, and she was my Naomi, and I was her Ruth. And I just looked at her and I wanted to be who she was. She just loved me. I wasn't a Christian at first, and I know that now being a Christian, how that must have broke her heart. But she always showed me love, never criticized me, always complimented me, not in a flamboyant way, but just like when there was real truth, she would bring that, oh, you're such a good cook, or, you know, and yet she was an amazing cook. And and I just wanted to be like her, and I knew that being like her, I needed God.
I want to encourage us not to forget the most obvious invitation on the journey of this life. And that is our very own family, our children, our grandchildren. Maybe it's an auntie or a child in your neighborhood. But there's something remarkable when we slow down enough to share our journeys upward toward God with all of those younger generations in our life. So let's not forget the importance of slowing down so that we can bring our loved ones, those that are closest to us, along this journey toward the heart of pilgrimage.